Hello, everybody. Josh Neighbors here, Locked On Big 12 podcast. Today, it is our final team preview of 2022. Matt Tait of the Lawrence Journal World joins us to preview the Jayhawks for 2022, a very intriguing team. Let's get right into this, Matt. Let's get no intro. We'll just go right into this. So, this team, I've already bet the over on the win total, 2.5. I decided to go at the over. I think there's some optimism here. Just off the bat, do you think they finished last in the Big 12 again?
Oh man, that's it's one of those things where anybody that says no, I don't blame them, but it's really hard to say no, I think, until they A, do it, and until B, we see some other teams sort of start to fall down. I mean, that's always been the problem with Kansas football, among many other things. You know, they've had their coaching issues, they've had their talent issues, they've had their obviously turnover has been a big problem too, but it's always been, in order to climb out of the cellar, you have to pass people, and all those other people continue to get better around them. There have been coaching changes. Texas Tech, West Virginia, some of those lower tier type teams have had coaching changes as well, but those haven't been nearly as dramatic and difficult as all of the coaching changes that Kansas has had. So I think when anybody does a poll, preseason Big 12 poll, whether it's a media member or a coach, even for the coaches poll, I mean, they start there. They put, well, Kansas 10, and let's go from there. And so I think that anybody that says no, they won't finish last this year, there's validation, there's reason, there are things that make sense behind that point of view. But I think if you're putting money on it, or you're putting your reputation on it, or your credibility on it, I think you have to pick them there. And then if you're wrong, you're wrong. But
Right.
I don't see him finishing out of 10th place this year. And having said that, I think they're a much better team. I think they are improving. I think they are headed in the right direction. It just has to take time, and they haven't had enough time yet. So I've got them 10th. I've wavered on that under or the over, like you're talking about. 2.5, is the number. It's a perfect number because it's really hard. And that's what those numbers would be. If it were 2, it would be, I'd take the over no matter what, and you would feel good about pushing at 2. But to have to get that third win is it's tough, man. Because here's my validation and justification for that. The Duke number is 3.5, and they play Duke in week 4. And so all of the Duke fans and analysts and people that cover that program, when they start looking at this exact same question from the Blue Devils perspective, it's okay, they're going to go 3.5 over, under, you're going to go over. And then the people that are arguing the over for Duke say, okay, Kansas is a win. And it's
Right.
It's not even a debate, right? It's just chalk that one up, and where else are the automatics? So when you combine that with the fact that Vegas, doesn't miss often, it makes me wonder if the under is the right move. So I haven't made my official prediction yet or anything crazy like that, but I think I'm probably leaning toward 2. And having said that, I think they could get 4, and that wouldn't shock me. So that's why they call it gambling. It's a gamble. I wish you luck.
So, I think the one thing about Lance Leipold that's really, it's very interesting is that, he goes and takes this job. Like he is, in a difficult time too, right? Takes the job at May and misses all the spring practice, whatever. I mean, that is somebody who has to want to go and take that job. And we've heard so much about all the cultural changes, like, the focus on nutrition, right? And the organization, and like just stuff on a day-to-day basis to get these guys together. And I think that you saw it kind of come to fruition at the end of last year when they beat Texas. And not just that, they were really close in games with West Virginia and TCU. So that you kind of saw, I think the thing with them last year was playing 4 full quarters.
Right.
Like what is the impact here in year number 2? Really, it's almost kind of like year 1.5 in some ways, but what is the impact that he has had? Just what do you notice from watching the Les Miles group, the David Beatty group, and then you watch a Lance Leipold group? What is the tangible difference that you see?
Yeah, I don't care if you're talking about the players or the fans. There's a real belief that they look out there and they see a guy who knows what he's doing. and knows how to do this and isn't overwhelmed by the challenge, isn't trying to do gimmicky stuff to expedite it. I mean, Lance Leipold's been a winner everywhere he's been. He's built things everywhere he's been, and he's built it the old-fashioned way through time, hard work, and effort. And he took this job knowing that's what it was going to take. I mean, there's no way he thought in year 2 we'll go to a bowl game. I mean, it's just not how it works, and it's not reasonable to think that really anywhere, but especially at Kansas when you're digging out of such a hole. So, I remember talking to him when he first got the job and asking him, man, you must just be a glutton for punishment. I mean, to want to continue to build these things, because he's done it everywhere he's been. And you would think one time a guy would want to just sit there and enjoy it. Right. And
Right.
he had Buffalo going a little bit. He could have stayed there and rode that for a few more years and enjoyed the success of what he built. But these challenges really appeal to him. He's wired that way. Obviously the exposure and the raise that he got in terms of pay. I mean, those things attracted him to Kansas too. There's no question about it. And I think he is also wired in a way that says, yeah, it's cool I did what I did at Whitewater. It's really cool that we got Buffalo going, but let's prove it in the Big 12. Let's show the world and ourselves that what we do and how we do it works at the highest level. And I think that was a big part of it. So, that confidence and commitment to the process and to grinding and to taking the necessary steps to really build something of substance, I think those are the most tangible things you see. That's what changes the culture, albeit slowly, but it does change it. And these guys have bought in. They feel it from him. They realize that, he's not asking them to do anything that he's not doing too. Now, that doesn't mean he's trying to go out and run 4.340s or anything like that, but he's grinding. The guy doesn't sleep. The guy's working constantly on everything. I mean, ways you can improve the program, ways you can help fundraise for upgrades and facilities, new schemes that you can incorporate that take advantage of your personnel, ways you can work with your offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator to think just outside the box enough to give yourselves a little better chance. I mean, like I said, he doesn't sleep and he's committed to this thing. And so I think that there have been a lot of guys here in the past, and I've been here for every one of them, that talked a pretty good game about changing the culture and hey, we want to do this and we need to do that and all this stuff. And it sounded good, but the commitment to it always was a little bit lacking. And that's because it's a darn freaking hard job. I mean,
Yeah.
it can suck the life out of you. It really can. And so you have to be wired just a little differently to be willing and able to stick in there and grind through it. And Lance is that guy, and he's done that so far. And that's why the arrow's pointed up. That's why guys like you are looking at this thing with some optimism and seeing, yeah, over makes sense. Over's never made sense at Kansas. The over has never, not in a bunch of years. And so now it does. And I understand it. I think people are tapping into that and it's correct, but it's still, for me, and especially being so close to it, I do think I need to see it actually play out before I think that they've arrived, and I think that's what this year will be. Excuse me. I think that's what this year will be. I think it'll be, look, we're better. The talent's upgraded. We're in more games. We're more competitive. I mean, this is their perspective, them saying this, right? And then next year you go into the year with some real hope, and maybe you can start talking those things that people don't always talk about around here, like winning 5 or 6 games and
Right.
bowl eligible and things like that. But I think it's a year early if you start doing it now. But I know you're not doing that. You're looking for 3. So
Right. Well, that's how. I mean, I think we hear so much about these coaches being, it's all about our process. Kids buying into our process. Like this is an actual process that feels tangible and something you can watch. And I will say this to your talent point, because I think this is gonna be a big focal point for them. Running the football. This is going to be I mean, in terms of backfields, like they actually have I would say one of the 3 best backfields in the Big 12.
no doubt.
Devin Neal is really good. They had Kai Thomas, who's also really good. And I think the fact that they now have 2 guys that they can run at you. And add the fact that Jalen Daniels is pretty decent runner himself. The strategy for them is probably to play keep away, right? Like this is probably the best thing. And that Oklahoma game, that's what they did really. I guess keep away and take away is probably the right way to do it.
Right.
If they can limit possessions in games and force a couple turnovers, like they have a really good chance. And I thought that's what the OU game kind of showed, right? They did a good job of kind of working the clock in that game and made OU pay on that awful Caleb Williams interception. Obviously, Caleb Williams helps win that game, but still, like that was kind of a game plan that you could see working. And it's going to be for them about running the football this year. I mean, am I off there, or is that kind of the formula on offense?
No, that's it. I mean, they want to be multiple, like every offensive coordinator will say, and they're capable. I mean, they have some decent receivers that can make plays, and Jalen's got a big arm, and if they keep defenses off balance, they can use the passing game plenty, and it can be a controlled type of passing game that helps with what you're saying, time of possession and keep the football and dominate the clock and things like that. I think that their passing game can still be that. But yeah, I mean, their strength is their running back room. It's their number one strength. I don't think you're crazy to say it's one of the three best in the Big 12 by any means. One of the guys who you didn't even mention, a guy named Daniel Highshaw. He's from Oklahoma, and he was hurt last year, but all signs say so far he's had maybe the best camp of anybody on their entire roster. So there's a third guy who would have played a lot last year if he didn't get hurt, and he kind of had an injury that was lingering all season and kept him from.
And keeping guys fresh is going to be huge for them. And that's the one thing last year. Devin Neal was pretty. They had to ride him. They had to ride him. And they can keep guys fresh this year, it sounds like.
No question. I mean, and those guys are all team first. Devin Neal's not trying to win the Heisman. Kai Thomas not trying to win the Heisman. They're trying to win football games. And if that means they each get 7, 8, 10 carries a game and they're not the guy, then if they find a way to win or even in the game, they'll be more than happy with that. Of course, anybody wants to be the guy, right? And rack up stats. But these guys are so hungry for wins and success that they'll do, most of them anyway, from what I've seen this camp. I mean, most of them are willing to do whatever that means. And that includes Jalen Daniels. I mean, he said it last year when that was more of a quarterback competition. He said, if me being the quarterback is not the right thing for this team, then I don't want to be the quarterback. And, he wasn't. Last year, it took an injury for him to get in there. And Jason Bean, it was the starter most of the season last year. And he's back and better than ever, they say. So their quarterback position is solidified all of a sudden. And they're just full of guys with that mentality. But, yeah, the running game is critical. They've got more than just those three, too. I mean, they've got Torrey Loughlin, who's been around here a long time, and a big physical guy who can run the football and play some different styles and has some versatility to him, and had moments last year where he looked really good. Another transfer, a Nebraska transfer, Morrison, is another guy. I mean, Nebraska hasn't been Nebraska lately, but that's at least Big Ten football, and the guy's got experience and is another guy you can give the rock to if you need to make sure you're keeping guys fresh. So they're loaded there, and their O-line is they lost only one starter from last season, and it really showed improvement throughout the second half of that season. It didn't start great, but how could it? Like you mentioned, he missed spring football. It's a brand new system, brand new coaching staff. They did show improvement, and they're pretty steady. They're not going to wow you. It's not a line that you see at Alabama that just makes you go, holy cow, those are first round draft picks. I mean, it's more of a grinder type of line, but obviously they're not going to run the football and have success there without him. So I think the fact that they're 4 guys back from last year's starting group, that's so big, maybe as big as the talent at the running back position, because those guys know each other, they understand the system, they're comfortable in it, and they believe in what's going on too. So the offense has enough to be competitive. The defensive side of the ball has a couple more questions, I think, but there's been upgrades there talent wise too, and some returners mixed in there as well. So I think the roster, look, it's not about are they better? They are better. I'll tell you that right now, and I think anybody would. This is a much better football team, and I think it will show up. It's just a matter of, are they that much better to where it shows up in wins and losses. And I don't know if they're there yet.
So on the defensive side of things, I mean, they're going to return 7 starters, looks like 7, 8 guys who started. But I mean, the thing is, they were so bad last year on
Right.
defense.
Right.
You know, I've asked this question to essentially everybody that, you know, I've done these previews with. There's always a certain group of a lot of these teams. It feels like where they're returning a lot of guys, but it wasn't necessarily a productive group the prior year. So like, you know, how many of them get better? Do they get better together? Do some of them individually take steps? Some of them not, you know, that's the big question, right? And for a defense that allowed, you know, 42 points per game, they were 129th against the rush, 81st against the pass, and 126 total. What's Brian Borland doing to get this group, you know, into gear? What are they? Because this is a line of scrimmage league right now. The Big 12 is. I know everybody likes to think it's a, you know, spread it out and pass it around. It's a joke everybody makes, but it's not. It hasn't been like that for a minute now.
Right.
So, what are they doing on the defense side of things to you know, try and rectify what happened last year?
Yeah, it's transfers. I mean, that's the biggest thing, right? And a lot of the transfers are in the secondary and at the linebacker position. You know, they've got a guy who started all 13 games at Purdue last year coming in as a safety. They've got a cornerback who's probably going to start, who played at Michigan State last year. I mean, those, you know, and look, like everybody wants to talk transfers, and we've seen it here going back to Charlie Weiss when he brought in, you know, 3-4 Notre Dame guys with him. You know, that's great. That sounds cool. Like a 5-star quarterback from Notre Dame coming to Kansas. But, you know, their time had been done at Notre Dame. They weren't playing. And so you take it with a grain of salt because there's a reason guys are leaving places, right? But I think the guys they brought in, whether they were, you know, still wanted at their old places or not, I think they are better than they had last year. And they've also played enough big time football that they can come in here, and as long as that chemistry can develop and they can, you know, pick up the system and things like that, which, you know, that's what they do. This is easy stuff for these guys. They live and breathe it, you know. So I think that's the biggest thing. The transfer portal has been good to them. I mean, they've got a top 25 transfer class, and that's really helped in the secondary. It's really helped at the linebacker spot, but it's helped up front too. I mean, the D line, you know, they've got Lonnie Phelps is a defensive end, pass rushing kind of guy. Lorenzo McCaskill, another big body up there who can do some things for them, especially getting after the passer. Because look, as you mentioned, it wasn't a great defense, and they lost maybe their best defensive player. I'd say probably it's Kenny Logan, who is back.
Kenny Logan, yeah.
You know, I think Kenny's game's terrific, and I think, you know, he led Power 5 in tackles last year.
Mm-hmm.
And this year he doesn't want to do that. You know, he wants more interceptions, and he doesn't want to be a safety who has to clean up every play, right? Hopefully linebackers and D linemen in front of him will take care of that, and he can just do what safeties do, you know, and he's willing to do whatever. But so he's probably their best player. But their other one from last season, you know, Kyron Johnson was a draft pick, and he's gone. So it was really important for them to replace Kyron and his pass rush ability, and they did it with bigger, even more physical bodies. And then the linebacker room is completely been overhauled almost. I mean, Rich Miller, Gavin Potter, they're both back from last year, but I think they will play. But I think, you know, counting on them and having them be sort of the faces in there is a thing of the past. I mean, they're rotation guys. They may start, I don't know, but, you know, they're rotation guys that aren't going to have to, you know, play 60, 70, 80 snaps by any means. You know, they're going to play a much smaller role, and hopefully, obviously for the Kansas perspective, hopefully that will make them more effective and make the others more effective too. But they've upgraded there, and it's really the big question on defense for me is just have they had enough time, and how quickly does all that come together? Because it's great to bring a starting safety from Purdue and a linebacker from Central Florida and a corner from Michigan State, and, you know, go get these talented dudes that are looking for a fresh start. But it only works. It only goes so far if they can all, you know, come together quickly. And all signs point to that being the case. I mean, this is a team that really has good chemistry. They like each other. They get along great. They're in it together. I talked recently to a handful of those new guys about, you know, is there less of a burden on your shoulders, basically over what has been a miserable decade of college football here because you weren't a part of it. You know, you don't have to sit there and wear that. Like, this is your first time here. And So you're 0-0, and you don't have that loser mentality attached to you.
Mhm.
And mostly across the board, they all said, well, we're a team though. That's our past too. Now we came here, we're part of this, and a lot of these guys were here for that stuff. And so what they felt and what they still feel, we feel now, and we've taken that on, and that to me speaks about that buy-in and that culture, and then obviously the chemistry of just a group that sees the same vision and wants to go grind together and fight for it, and we'll see how it works, but there's a lot of reason to believe they've upgraded on that side of the ball too, to the point where it can at least benefit them if they want to play the style that you talked about, which is control the game on offense, run the
Right.
football. You don't need a defense to pitch a shutout. You just need a defense to be capable of getting some stops. And in the past, we haven't seen a whole lot of that here.
All right, Matt, where can people find you and your work?
KUsports.com is the website, and that's the Lawrence Journal World here in Lawrence. That's our paper. That's our KU specific site, and obviously my Twitter handle is right there. I love and hate Twitter as much as anybody, so I'm there all the time, for better or worse. But yeah, that's where our coverage will be, and it's crazy that it's here. We're closing in on less than 2 weeks now, and they open on a Friday night, which is always kind of weird, but it should be a good night. I mean, there's a lot at stake. They're still talking conference realignment around here. They're worrying about the future. They need stadium upgrades. I mean, there's a lot of noise around Kansas football that isn't just about talent and wins and losses and coaching. So there's a lot at stake, but that first one against Tennessee Tech is, man, that should be easy. It should be easy.
Yeah,
And if it's not, then we see a whole different season playing out pretty quickly. But it should be a feel-good night for fans, and we'll see how many people are there. That's always the interest to me. The opener is interesting because there's a lot of optimism, but who actually takes the time to show up and go? And that's always a bigger question. So it's here though. It's crazy. I think the summer went way too fast, but I think that every year. So we might as well dive full into football. So thanks for having me, and yeah, KUsports.com is where we will cover the Jayhawks all year.
Appreciate you, Matt Tait, for taking some time with us today.
Thank you. Take care.